Hi guys, so this is part 2 of the names that we got. So this is for the 1970s. So for Patrick/Paddy, we got possibly a Patrick William Clark, who was in the military sometime between 1888 and 1970. Not entirely sure when. Couldn't see the dates properly. For Clark, we've got possibly Dorothy Alice Clark, possibly Samuel Clark, possibly an Elizabeth Clark, possibly a Charles Edwin Clark, or a Patrick William Clark, as in the Patrick William Clark from above. Or we've got a Private William Samuel James Clark, or a Francis Janet Clark, or a different Samuel Clark. For Edgar, we've got a possible Albert Richard Egerton, which is possible that it was a last name rather than a first name. For Francis, we've got a possible Francis Jane Wilson. For Blanche, we've got a possibly Evelyn Blanche Wilson or Raymond Blanche Roberts. For Beverly, we've possibly got an Beverly Ann Large. For Edwin, we've got possibly a George Edwin Walker or a Charles Edwin Clark or Private George Edwin Cameron. For Laura, we've got possibly a Laura Ellen Gale, Geall, who was aged between 14 and 15. Now, bear in mind, we did get the word 14, so that's quite possible. Links to that one. Laura Verrill, or Laura Nellie Waller, or Kathleen Laura Mitchell Ford, or a Mary Laura Willett. For Jason, we got a possible Jason Lingham from Fletching area, who was born in 1971 and went on until 2022. For Colin, we've got possibly Charles Anthony Colin Weston. Elizabeth, possibly Elizabeth Ann Wilson, Elizabeth Susan Robinson, Elizabeth Clark, Miss Elizabeth Walker, Elizabeth Simmons Wilson, or Elizabeth Mary Wilson. Robinson, possibly a Thomas George Robinson, or a Richard Robinson, or a Julian Perry Robinson, or a Susan Lily Ralph Robinson, or Elizabeth Susan Robinson. For Samuel, we have a possibly Samuel Wilson Cotton, Samuel Clark, or Private William Samuel James Clark, or a different Samuel Clark, or a Samuel Victor Jones. For Evelyn, it's possibly Evelyn Blanche Wilson, or from Wales, or my boyfriend Luke's grandmother. For Jasper, quite likely the HMS Jasper, so probably not looking into that name anymore, name-wise. Lizzie, possibly Elizabeth Ann Wilson. Nancy, possibly Nancy Lillian Green, or Nancy Johnson, or Nancy Margaret Clark Beckett. Dorothy, possibly Dorothy Alice Clark, or Dorothy Edith Walker. Raymond, possibly Raymond Briggs, or Raymond George Novice, or Raymond Blanche Roberts. Reginald, possibly Reginald George Wilson, or Reginald J. Clark, or Reginald Dixon Jones. Ezekiel, possibly Ezekiel Jones, or Henry Ezekiel Wilson from Santa Clara. I'm not entirely sure on that one. Susan, possibly Susan Lily Ralph Robinson, or Elizabeth Susan Robinson, or Susan Walker. Ethel, possibly Ethel Marjorie Jones, or Ethel Clark, or Ethel Wilson. Amelia, possibly Amelia Ann Clayton. There is another one that is a possibility of, which is an Amelia who married a Mariana, rather. Now, bear in mind, we did get Amelia or the Mariana in relation to the Jasper. We got Joan, possibly Margaret Joan Walker. Isabella, possibly Isabella Hannah Spink. Bob Robert or Roberts, possibly Robert George Jackson. Private Robert Henderson. McCree, who was from Canada but born in Seaford. Or Raymond Blanche Roberts. For Bertie Elizabeth Herbert or Albert, we got a possible Marine Albert Richard Davis. For Walker, we got possibly a Margaret Joan Walker, a George Edwin Walker, Rifleman Richard Walker, Miss Elizabeth Walker, or Dorothy Edith Walker. Julian, possibly a Julian Perry Robinson. Anne, we got an Anne Clark, a Mary Ann Clark, a Beverly Ann Large, or an Anne Adams. Elijah, we know, is the chosen name of a demonic entity, so we're not looking into that one. Richard, possibly Richard Robinson, Richard Clark, or Marine Albert Richard Davis from the UK, Rifleman Richard Walker, or Albert Richard Egerton. George, possibly a George Edwin Walker, a Thomas George Robinson, Robert George Jackson, Private George Edwin Cameron, George Clark, George Henry Wilson, Second Lieutenant George Cole, George Adams Fuller, or Raymond George Novice, who died aged 5 months. And we did get the word 5 as well. Obviously at 5 months he wouldn't be able to talk, but we don't know whether that was him talking. It could have been somebody else talking. Jones, we got possibly Ethel Marjorie Jones, Ezekiel Jones, Richard Dixon Jones, or Samuel Victor Jones. Wilson, possibly Elizabeth Ann Wilson, Henry Ezekiel Wilson, Evelyn Blanche Wilson, Elizabeth Simmons Wilson, Elizabeth Mary Wilson, George Henry Wilson, Frances Jane Wilson, or Ethel Wilson. Adam, possibly Adam Eve. Yeah, pun kind of intended there, probably. I don't know. It's a bit weird. Or George Adam Fuller, or Anne Adams. Beth is possibly Elizabeth Ann Wilson. So the next time you guys see me, I'll be at Kent Life Old Village. I'm hoping to get some daytime footage, possibly, but definitely some nighttime footage from the actual night, from 2 different angles, because I'll have a body camera and an actual camera in my hand as well. So you'll be able to see what's happening. So I'll see you at Kent Life Old Village, unless myself or my boyfriend come up with any updates for this series. I am going back to Anne Cleve's house in October for a part 2. So hopefully we'll get some more information and stuff then, some more words, more names, etc., that I can look into it then. I'm also planning on going again with my boyfriend sometime next year, because the October one I'm going on my own. So that'll be interesting to see whether I get the name Evelyn again or not. If I do, then it's to do with Anne Cleve's house. If I don't, it's to do with my boyfriend, is what I'm thinking. They will each be in their own playlists. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.